Was good. Give me a 1 in the chat if you could hear me loud and clear. What's good, Riza? I just wanted this to be a quick live, just to go over, just a conversation me and Brandon from Pan Africanism Strikes Back had earlier today. I was actually a little bit surprised that, Brandon chose to do his video kind of in critique of my video because I didn't necessarily mean to antagonize his view per se. But either way it's good and it is what it is. And I just wanted to take this time to just articulate some more of my views, like my actual views about this particular conversation. Because I felt, a little bit, Brandon's obviously passionate. That was muted. Can you hear me? Peace was good, Jolanda. Give me a 1 if you can hear me. Okay. How do I sound now? So I'm breaking up a bit. If I sound good, I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna keep it pushing. Nice, nice. Yeah. So, just maybe what I'm gonna go into first is I'm gonna review, some of the content that I had previously dealing with Garvey and the Garvey movement, and I'm struggle streaming a little bit. Those good naps. How do I sound now? Do I sound okay? No choppy and no sound. Yeah, I think my mic is losing connection for some reason. I'm not really sure why. Um, but if I sound good, I'm gonna try it again, and if not, if it happens again, I'll probably just try to go on without a mic and see how good that is. Give me a 1 if you can hear me. Give me 2. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna keep going, and this is something that Brandon, the brother Pan Africanism Strikes Back, he was really adamant on just classifying Garvey as a capitalist. And, I didn't necessarily get to articulate what my full position was. And, for those of you who have been listening to me for a very, very long time, like, that I don't necessarily vibe into or buy into the left right paradigm per se. And I think that we have our own paradigm as, men and women of African descent. And I think that we should strive for that. We should strive to exist within, our original societies and systems as best as we can. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we're utopian or that we think everything's going to be perfect, but it means that it's more important for us to establish autonomy wherever we may be. So this is just a presentation that I did previously. And if you guys are familiar with my channel and you're familiar with some of the positions that I take, this position is actually probably one of the most important positions because I got a chance to describe like my position on capitalism and what I think about capitalism. In the video that I had with Brand Pan Africa Strikes Back, and I guess to a lot of people it may seem a little bit controversial, but the position that I was trying to relay is basically the fact that, capitalism, if we exist within a capitalist economy, there are certain aspects of our movement that are going to include capital. It's going to include the formation of capital, the composition of capital. But the position that we should take is the fact that, if we're all about liberating ourselves, liberating our people, from a realistic African centered perspective, we should look at the way we relate within the capitalist system and then organize our institutions and businesses according to those political objectives, right? Now, one thing that I've also always tried to articulate is the fact that I wouldn't necessarily put capitalism above everything, above all. And in the video, when I was describing position about, basically not necessarily mixing black identity politics with capitalism, I was mainly referring to grifters, people who try to say that if you don't buy my t-shirt, if you don't buy my DVD, the race is going to be destroyed. And you have to necessarily participate in group economics in my context in order for black people to be improved and empowered. And that's still my position. I don't necessarily, if you're a black person and you want to make money, go ahead and make money. If you want to build, financial institutions, real estate investment, I've never said that I'm against that. What I've always said is that don't necessarily mix it with this race grifting, because that always ends in a scam. And to be honest, to be frank, capitalism wasn't necessarily meant to lift all boats. It was never meant for everybody to be equal. And to a degree, philosophically, you could argue that equality is absolutely impossible, right? And I'm probably more so along that trend, but still at the same time, if capitalism, if we are functioning within a capitalist society, we have to accept there's winners and losers. There's going to be an elite class, an upper class, and a lower class, and we have to be willing to live with the results of that. But if we aspire for something greater, if we aspire for something more improved, if we aspire for something more developed, in the same way that capitalism is development on feudalism, right? And this is it for those of you who are familiar with historical dialectics, this is going to make sense. There's potentially, possibly within a future time, a better system than the way that the modern economy is formulated. And as African people, viewing things from an African-centered perspective, we should include those different possibilities in our analysis. And that's kind of why the reason that I originally made the African mode of production. If you're familiar with my African mode of production video, where I go into the different elements of African-centered economies, that's essentially why. To give us a form of autonomy, so we're not necessarily stuck in a left-right paradigm conversation that we don't necessarily control. Now, this is also an important thing. And the reason why I wanted to articulate this again, I have a video about, where I talk about Garveyism and some of the anti-capitalist elements of Garveyism, is even though Garvey promoted commerce, promoted businesses as a unit of production, he promoted development, that doesn't necessarily mean that profit motive was a main objective of his inner workings. He actually had the objective of liberating African people on a global level. So in my analysis, it would be inaccurate to call Garvey a capitalist, even though capital formations did exist within the UNIA auxiliaries. That was another point I was trying to articulate. And forgive me if, in so many words I wasn't able to do it. But essentially, what I'm saying is that we exist beyond the limits and the boundaries of political economy as is defined in the Western world. And this quote, like in terms of praxis, in terms of practical analysis, is important because we know that modern wars are the general outgrowth of dissatisfied capitalistic interest. And in the previous live earlier today, me and Brandon, we had a conversation briefly about the fact that in most cases, when you're dealing with these nascent socialist governments, typically the United States military plays an adversarial role with the government, and it's a competition. If you have an alternative capitalism or capital mode of production, right, you're going to have to necessarily compete with the United States government. So that's not necessarily out of whack per se, right? But it's also important to understand that we exist in a realm where we're going to have to participate in the competition as well. Because when American identity is considered, we're not necessarily at the top of the equation because of our lack of political, influence, leverage on an international scale. Right? If y'all are still rocking with me, give me one. Just let me know if what I'm saying is making sense with regards to, generally speaking, the relationship between capitalism and socialism as it relates to African people. And we just hanging out, and I'm just going over, just some basic elements of Garveyism that you could look at, right? And this is Dr. Tony Martin, and from an organizational perspective, Garvey didn't necessarily agree with the political objectives of the communists of the United States because he viewed that racist. From an organizational perspective, he definitely thought and fought for just a bigger unity. I was muted. I think I was muted. Shout out to Pan Africanism Strikes Back, because I love the intellect and I love the conversation and being able to hash out these different views, right? He's definitely a content creator that I respect, that I've been a fan of his content for a very, very long time, right? I've been a fan of him, going after the hidden hairline, right? And I'm always going to give him props for being one of the main ones to take down or just expose the hidden hairline shop scam. I'm in the back chat, having some convos with him, and again, right? If someone were to ask me what my particular position would be, I wouldn't necessarily say that I am a capitalist or a socialist per se, because I would be more interested in an African identifier to basically articulate that point, right? So, and I don't want to necessarily go into all of this, but this is just some of Tony Martin's analysis of Marcus Garvey's, economic positions, just some of the positions that he held, right? So, like, he didn't necessarily believe in like an elite class of Black people exploiting the lower classes of Black people for benefit. He was more so into interracial solidarity, right, and liberation, right? So if you look at this, the royal and privileged class of idlers who used to tyrannize and oppress the humble hordes of mankind are now experiencing difficulty in holding their control over the sentiment of the people. It's a really, really good point. And what I want to get into, I'm gonna share my screen and I'm gonna get into a quote, which is one of my favorite quotes by Patrice Lumumba, right, about the accusations of him being a communist, right? I don't necessarily think that he agreed with that, right? But I'm going to read one of his quotes to just further articulate the point. Let's see if I can share my screen. So if y'all could see this, let me know. I don't know if it's showing. Okay, there it is. It's a little bit small, but this is Patrice Lumumba, right? So the question that they asked him is, the question says, some of your political opponents accuse you of being a communist. Could you reply to that? Right, now, for those of you who oh, there he is. I'm gonna go ahead and share the link for the good brother. Pan Africanism Strikes Back. Or anybody else who would like to come on. Ooh. Pasted the link in the chat for Brandon if he wants to come on in. Yeah, but basically, this is a question that was asked to Lumumba. He said, some of your political opponents accuse you of being a communist. Could you reply to that? And then his answer, it was, this is a propagandist trick aimed at me. I am not a communist. The colonialists have campaigned against me throughout the country because I'm a revolutionary and demand the abolition of the colonial regime, which ignored our human dignity. They look upon me as a communist because I refused to be bribed by the imperialist, right? This is from an interview to Francois, or the Evening French, in 1960 on July 22nd. And he continues, we are neither communist Catholics nor socialists. We are African nationalists. We reserve the right to choose our friends in accordance with the principles of positive neutrality. Well, that's fascinating. I'm going to go ahead and add the brother Brandon to the stream. What's good?
Hey, what's up?
Hey, I have to admit, I was kind of taken aback, by your video, but I appreciate you for articulating, your view about the content and, for us being able to have a back and forth.
You said you were taken back by my video, my live stream earlier?
Yeah, because I've been a huge fan of your content, and I assume that we were more so on the same side, right? So like I was kind of surprised about the angle of the live.
Oh yeah, the whole thing with everything is like I'm not angry at anybody. I don't really care what people believe. I'm okay with people having beliefs. I mean, we live in America. You are free to have your own beliefs. I just need people to be able to articulate what they believe, because it's like I'm trying to get to like a point where we can find common ground, but not saying this is you, but if people always change what they believe at the spur of the moment, it's impossible to do that. Like, I would rather you be like, if you're, I'm not saying you're a communist, but if you're like, yeah, Brandon, I'm a communist, I believe in socialism, I would prefer that to it being like non-committal. And this is not directed at you, but this is other people I talk to. It's like they be waffling. Like, they'll say one thing, then when they feel like the argument is slipping, they'll try to jump to another like belief,
Mm-hmm.
So I just think we need to just stand in it so we can really understand the arguments that are made against it. Then we can make a decision as to whether we're going to stick with it or move on. But I hope I'm trying to make.
What's funny though, like, and I kind of explained it later on in the video, is that when I've had conversations with Marxists, like they always accuse me of being like a cultural nationalist, a fascist. They say that, I could never be a leftist. So I found that like in those spaces, like the communist socialist spaces, I never fit in because of some of my views about like African politics. So like I find it interesting how, like, from your perspective, being a proud conservative Republican, kind of we're getting socialist vibes, and it kind of feels as if like a lot of times when I try to have a nuanced convo, I get misrepresented by what's actually my inner true beliefs.
I mean, I understood what you were saying. Like, you are a person who's like, I believe I have my own ideas, but I'm willing to go with the flow of whatever works. You're kind of like, look, it doesn't matter what form this takes. We just need to implement something that's going to work and deliver results. Sure. I feel like that's where you're coming from.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And like, I have, people in my family who are Republicans, other people who are Democrats, and I have conversations with them, and I know that they genuinely mean well. Like, they may just have one issue or another that they feel really, really passionately about, and then it leads them to vote for Trump, leads some of them to vote for Biden. And my thing is like, I'm not necessarily going to badger them for that, but more so like I'm really into like the commercial sides of things and seeing how we can employ more of our people so we don't necessarily have to rely on like these Western political parties to save the day.
I mean, at the end of the day, we got to accept that the leadership is going to come from our space, right? Like the space that guys like me and you inhabit. We're not like national darlings. We're not celebrities. We're also not like activists in the sense of we're marching and protesting and all that stuff. Our elite class is totally bought out. They've sold out. Even our lower activism class is totally bought out. So it's going to take guys like me and you who have an understanding of compromise. You got to give something to get something. That's where our leadership's going to come from. The people who have a clear position, because it's like, look, our people need to be led somewhere, damn near anywhere, because anywhere is better than where we are now. Because we're kind of just like in a state of purgatory. We're not going up, we're not going down. We're just in the middle, and it's like we're in a tank that's filling up with water. We're treading water, but you can only do that so long. So I'm just like, look, if you're going to lead our people towards a socialist path, we'll lead them towards that path, but have a clear destination. If I'm going to lead them towards a conservative path, let's lead towards that path. But it's like, you might have a plan to get us like 5 blocks down the street, but then you got somebody with no plan criticizing your plan because it doesn't get us 10 blocks down the street. Like, dude, like I can get us 5 blocks, bro.
Yeah, no, I get it. And, I was talking to, my pops about this. And, like, he's someone who's like, he was a lifelong Democrat. But, when Hillary was the nominee, he's like, I'm done. And he voted for Trump. And, he was telling me about the reasons why he did it. How everybody was saying that, oh, you support a racist and da 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 da. But, like, he actually been following Hillary since a really, really, really young age. And he knew about, like, her different politics in Haiti, how she basically stole Haiti's gold, how, Africa was about to set up their own currency against the CFA franc, and how she basically stood in the way of that and stood against, like, raising the minimum wage in numerous African countries. And so, like, he told me that there's no way that, he doesn't care about the Republicans or his disagreements, but he couldn't see her being president. So, like, I understand that there's a wide array of diversity. And as what you said, like, in terms of leadership, right? Really what it is that those of us who are more productive and who are willing to be able to have a conversation with the halls of power, like Garvey said, that's how we get political leverage to actually get what we want to get done. So it's pretty simple when we really get down to it. And all I was trying to articulate is that, as Black people, especially in the West, we won't necessarily fit in, but it's better to have a smart strategy to get in where you fit in so we could actually make it happen.
Yeah, the thing is, like, so this is like my thing. Your father knew all that stuff about Hillary Clinton, not to mention she was the one who pushed Obama to kill Muammar Gaddafi after he willingly gave up his nuclear weapons, in a way to kind of like sue for peace with the United States of America.
Yeah.
My issue is, how did Black people manage to still vote for this chick and she got an overwhelming majority of the Black vote? And we just stood by like, that's cool. That lady is damn near worse than Joe Biden, and we're cool with it. And there's not enough effort, I feel, in our community to make people aware of the true resume of these people that they're voting for.
Yeah.
And that's what I push against. That's why I'm so like, we need a radical change, because we're literally making radical decisions and using ignorance as an excuse. And I'm like, no, bro, like, imagine if Hillary Clinton got elected. Bro, we would have had World War III. Africa probably would have been in starvation by now and all this stuff.
No,
and we were one Donald Trump away from that happening. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I could definitely see, especially, from a standpoint of raising kids and children and everything, and I try to keep my private life private, but I definitely do have plans, to have children. And that is a really, really big issue. Right. But at the same token, like, what I've learned to do, because I used to be a person who was extremely radical. Like, if you weren't like super, like, if I could use that term, pro-Black or whatever, I would call you a sellout. I'll call you a hater, coon, Uncle Tom. But as I've grown older and matured a little bit, I've learned that people make choices in voting for different reasons. And, if I don't necessarily, like, if I'm not employing somebody, or if I'm not, helping them feed their children, it's really difficult for me to, like, step in and say, oh, you can't necessarily vote this way, you can't necessarily vote that way, without, like, the amount of leverage, like institutional leverage, to where I could change laws or basically change access to income to really force them to make the right decision, if that kind of makes sense.
No, it makes total sense. And the thing everyone has to understand is this is more about, like, a lot of this is just about like age and maturity. Most people, as they get older, become conservative, because once they start having a family, they get a decent job, their values are gonna change, the priorities are going to change. So it's like, that's understandable. So, but my biggest thing is just like, when you ask Black people why they didn't vote for Donald Trump, why did you vote for, okay, both are racist. Black people agree on that. Okay, so why did you vote for this racist over the other one? The issue with me is you're voting for racist one, Joe Biden, because of racist two, Donald Trump's personal failings. Oh, he's the orange man. He's this, he's that. You're not really voting based on any policy that impacts you in a negative or positive way, because if you were doing that, Trump's policies benefited black people way more than anything Biden has done, which is absolutely nothing. That's my issue. Most people don't understand why they voted against Trump. They don't. They're just like, he's terrible. Why? Well, give me something. Oh, it's just that he's terrible. And they try to end the conversation. And my issue is you're making a decision. The problem is you're not even making a decision. Someone's making the decision for you. And you're defending the decision that they made for you because you just went in the box and pulled the lever based on what CNN or MSNBC said. I want black people to start using the gift of autonomy and independent thought versus just going with the flow and then trying to defend it retroactively. That's not going to get us anywhere because people with that type of mindset, they'll always be easily manipulated, whether we're in Africa, America, South America, wherever, and we can't carry those type of people into Africa. Like, and a lot of those type of people are like, I'm a Pan Africanist and stuff, bro. I will be voting with the African government to exterminate your ass in that case.
You're really based for this convo. Shout out to Cujo's, my Haitian, my Zoe brother. I appreciate the brother coming on the platform to talk it out. Ain't no beef anyway. We all have different ideologies. No, I completely agree with that. I've had some disagreements with Dynas, but I really am inspired by a lot of his work. I have some disagreements with quite a few, individuals, intellectuals, if you will. And, the points that you laid out, Brandon, I completely agree to the extent of us needing structure as black people, because there's a lot of low information voters. There's a lot of people who are swayed by pastor, swayed by the media, et cetera. It's all. So like internally, when I look at the direction of the black community and, it's Democrat, and nothing gets done. And what we say we want, you just had Gavin Newsom turn his back on the reparations panel that he set up, right? That's frustrating. That's extremely frustrating. So I can resonate with that principle. At the same time, just to be fair, when I look at the Republican Party, I think to myself, the Republican Party could be a lot more successful if they would cut ties with the Fuenteses of the world, the Spencers of the world, like the Jared Taylors of the world. If they were more intelligent strategically with not necessarily openly associating themselves with white nationalists, to a certain degree, that charge would be null and void. So I can, to a degree, understand why certain low information black voters or certain voters who just feel emotionally about it, period, would look at that, even if they're conservative, like many black Southern Christian Democrats are really socially conservative, but they vote Democrat. So it's kind of to a degree, the nuance there is understandable. And I would necessarily prefer that we move beyond these labels and just work together to get the job done.
The thing is this. One, I think when we say, come on, bro. Oh, shoot, wrong person. Sorry. Hey, I think that what's up, dude? How's life? Good to see you again. Appreciate you. How you doing? I'm good. So, my guy who's working. Hey, hold on one second. So, real quick, here's the thing. I think more than the parties are associated with these guys, I think we watch the news channels that lean towards one side or the other, and if they bring a person like that on, then all of a sudden we are like, yo, the Republicans support this person. When in reality, even a guy like Donald Trump renounced the KKK, he renounced white supremacists, he renounced all that. And even his track record of doing business with black people, things he's done for black people, that should speak for itself. And that's when I get in the realm of believing that we're just using that as an excuse, because for one, so it's okay for them to associate, it's okay with Donald Trump to associate with a black nationalist, but he can't associate with a white nationalist, yet he's white. We're asking people to do stuff that we're not even willing to do.
Let me get this comment real quick. First of all, shout out to Shaka Ra. Shaka Ra has been putting some good work in the UK. And then we got Narmer X. And he says, going forward, we need to drop the European thinking systems of government, left versus right political party, don't benefit us as a race. And I definitely agree with that. And that's kind of what I was trying to articulate, in terms of like a third way type of analysis of like the Black experience politically, right? And, to Brandon's point, there's definitely a big effect of the media, especially social media, in terms of like the way that people see politics. So I'm going to let E. Bizzle, you can get what you wanted to say, and then I'll let Brandon respond.
Yes, sir. Yes, and you know what? It's a good conversation, but what I wanted to say, it will be some pushback as far as when you look at history, like Donald Trump when he did with that Central Park 4 or 5, when he did with that, he never had no pushback with that. So, but also as well, when you look at the Black history in our nation right now in the United States, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, whether you want to say they were from a Quran version or from Islamic version or a Bible church version, the church was still serious. So, how would you all deal with that as far as like voting Democratic?
Say that one more time.
How would you all deal with that as far as voting Democratic?
In terms of I think you said the church.
Yeah, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X.
I mean, I've met clergymen who, some of them are conservative, and it's the abortion issue. The abortion issue is what leads them to vote for GOP. And then there's other clergymen who say that police brutality, mass incarceration is their main talking point. So I don't necessarily think that you could pigeonhole them, even though the majority of Black Christians do vote Democrat. You have like the Sauls of the world, the Candace Owens of the world. It doesn't necessarily split down the line. So personally, I mean, the Black church used to be something that was revolutionary for Black people, but it's not so much anymore. So like some people think it's possible to resurrect that. I think the ship has sailed personally, right? But at the same time, I'm not going to necessarily castigate someone who's doing work in the community to basically get better policies for themselves and their family.
The only reason I ask is sometimes when you get people like I'm not trying to say Pan African. I mean, we've had this discussion before. He already knows my family's out there on the West Coast where he's at. But the only reasons that I will be careful with that is because that's how a lot of us have came up through the struggle. So we have to be careful when we use that type of language.
No, I get that. I definitely, like, without the Black church, there wouldn't necessarily be, like, a lot of the Pan Africanism in North America was just free enslaved or recently freed Africans basically working towards building a better relationship internationally. That's true. But at the same time, I would have to say that you can't get mad for the Black community for being upset about some of the treachery of the Black church at the same time.
I just think that, like, as far as Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, all these people, they're dead. We got to do what's best for us right now. I really give no credence to any of that stuff because they were doing what was best for them in that moment. They weren't looking back at what Marcus Garvey did and basing their actions on that, because Marcus Garvey was as far away from civil rights as you can get.
Wait. You say you gave no credence to Malcolm. Wait. Hold on, bro.
Listen.
Paul.
You gotta you gotta take
hold on. What you say, bro?
I didn't interrupt you.
No, hell no, bro. No, hell no, bro. No, and I ain't gonna let you ride with that shit, bro. No, you both.
Listen. Let Brandon go, and then you can go.
Yes. But you now you see why I am the way I am on my channel, because I let him talk. He got emotionally charged and he wants to, hell no. If you think this guy cares about Malcolm X or Martin Luther King, you're dumb. These people don't care about this stuff. These people use these names as a way to try to take a position of authority over other Black people. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King were doing what was best for them in their time. They weren't doing what Booker T. Washington thought was best. They weren't doing what Marcus Garvey thought was best, because if you ask those dudes, they would have been like, screw all that. Let's just go put in work and act like the Chinese and the black people before us who didn't really give two shits about the government. We just was trying to get some economic power, right? So now in our day, we got to take that approach. We can't be doing what we're doing based on what somebody was doing in the 1960s. That's called stagnation. That's called you're not even in the game at that point, because you're standing in a parking lot reading a 1968 newspaper clipping about a game that happened between the Brooklyn Dodgers and whoever else, when everybody else is in the stadium throwing passes, making plays. So my thing is, we have to do what's best for us now. Political identity can be one thing, but your political positioning should constantly be changing based on who's offering what. And what we know based on politics in our day is the Republican guy who every black person hates and doesn't know why, right? We can talk about the Central Park Five, all that stuff. Listen, I expect Trump to be a white man at the end of the day. He heard some heinous stuff happen to a white lady. He took out an ad. He went based on what he thought happened and what was true. We do the same thing. We go and defend shit that could be a total lie just because the optics of it. Some of these police shootings where the black person was 100% in the wrong, we looking at the optics feeling bad, and we wrong as two left shoes on the internet screaming at the top of our lungs, don't know our ass from our elbow, don't understand what's going on or the context. Later on, the truth come out and it's like, oh snap. So it was like that. And for example, the situation with Michael Brown, right? We didn't want to believe that dude was coming at that cop and all that stuff, but later on we found out that he was. People get things wrong. People make emotional decisions, reactionary emotional decisions. Does Donald Trump now have to be exempt from being a human being just because it makes us feel better to try to, put his feet to the fire over that? No, I'm not worried about the Central Park Five, because there was a lot of people who dropped the ball on the Central Park Five, including their own parents. You know what I'm saying? Their parents were telling them to admit to it, something that they didn't even do. So I'm going to blame Donald Trump for that? No. And guess what? My daughter's going to walk into a bathroom with a transgender man because of the Central Park Five who then got paid off and accepted they millions for what happened to them? No. There's no way you're going to tell me, Brandon, you got to sell yourself and your kids up the river because of something that happened to somebody you don't even know in a time when you weren't damn near even born, and some stuff where it's people where it was all kinds of BS happening on both sides. That's the politics of failure. You're trying to find a reason to make the wrong decision. You're looking for a reason to make a stupid decision. I'm sorry, I'm just not dumb like that. Like, maybe some of us are, but I ain't built like that. I got to do what's best for me today. And black people need to adopt that mindset. What's best for me? Because the only time people bring up the community is when they want you to do something that's going to hurt you in the long run. Oh, think about this person. Think about that person. Yeah, I am thinking about that person. That's why I'm voting for what's best for me. It's like this. This is the last thing I'm gonna say your family borrow money from you every single month, right? You the person who got the money, they come to you every month. Now they're telling you to vote for somebody who's going to raise your taxes. You're thinking in your mind, why would I vote for somebody who's going to raise my taxes? Let alone, why would you want me to vote for somebody who's going to raise my taxes when that gives me that makes a situation where I have less money to loan you? They don't even know. They're not even trying to pay attention to how something is going to directly affect them. They're just like, this is what makes me feel good right now, so go ahead and do it. Like some damn drug addicts. And that's why drugs hit our community harder than everybody else, because black people are more worried about feeling good versus doing what's best for us in the long term. A temporary high, that's what we get. Oh, Kamala Harris is the next first black female vice president. Yeah, that lasted for all of 2 weeks. And then you was back to getting shitted on. I don't want no temporary high. I just want some consistent, sustained stability so I can do what I'm doing in Africa and keep taking care of my people. That, at the end of the day, that's it. You can say what you want. It's all based on immaturity.
All right, I'm going to let Ibizo have the floor with this. And, Namer's comment, if you don't look at the past, you're bound to repeat the same mistakes and you'll have no direction. To a degree, we shouldn't dwell on the past. We shouldn't necessarily act as if we're in 1920, but in terms of lessons, the lessons of history.
And Kamji, real quick, Real quick, in the past we was voting Democrat, not getting shit. In the future, we voting for Democrat, not getting shit. So we're looking at the past and still making the same mistakes. That doesn't even apply to us.
Go in, Bizzle. I'll let you have the
This
floor.
is the thing. This is the thing. And thank you, brother. Thank you, both of you all. You made great points, but this is the dangerous part of that ideology is when you look at that. Okay, we could say the Republicans, they freed us from slavery or woo bop the band, but when you look at the Democrat, when you look at critical race theory or things of that nature, how do you look at that? I mean, is that not wrong or not?
Critical race theory?
Yes.
Yeah, my daughter has a critical race theory class. I asked her how she felt about it. She just was like, Dad, honestly, it just seems like we trying to blame white people for everything that happened to everybody. And I was just like, how do you feel about that? She was just like, I just feel like it's a waste of time. Like I could be like learning something versus this. And I was just like, that's pretty much how I feel about it. Why are we trying to keep, we are dwelling on the past. That's what I love about Africa. They have an adverse history too with white people, but they're not using that as a way.
You know what, Brother Brandon, I hear you talk about Africa. Why are you so much focused on Africa while you living in the most military strong country in the world? Why are you trying to go back when you hold on, wait a minute, hold on, pause. You over here right now. You don't have to go back to nowhere. Why are you trying to go back for what? They trying to get over here.
I'm in Africa right now, but I understand what you're saying. And the reason why I'm focused, let me tell you.
We right here. Nigga, you got $1 trillion. I'm sorry, Cam. I mean, you got $1 trillion government right now and military right now. Why are you over there? And I'm right here.
But you know why? Because you're not worried about $1 trillion. You worried about Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, the black church shit that's irrelevant. I can't build with you. I can't build with no black American. Period, because black Americans are
so you trying to tell me so you would put down Martin Luther King and Malcolm X?
Yeah, I don't give a shit about Martin Luther King or Malcolm X.
Oh, damn.
Because see, this is what I'm saying. Okay, I'll give you let me give you a prime example. Let me just help you understand okay, that's fine. Let me say this. I'm about to get off of this thing because my graphic designer, who's Kenyan, has come to my apartment in Kenya so we can do business and figure out ways to make my channel grow, right? He's about forward thinking and progress. Black people is about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, two people who've been dead for like 75 years. I'm not saying I got anything against them. They're irrelevant to what we're doing right now.
Do y'all hear this?
Yes. Chinese people ain't sitting up talking. Bruh,
I think
this is bad, bro. This is bad,
let me ask you a question.
Kamji,
that's fine. Kamji, let me ask you a question. Do you think Chinese people is sitting up thinking about Mao Zedong as much as black people is thinking about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X?
Yes, absolutely.
No, I'm asking Kamji.
That's a little bit of a loaded question, but I'll answer it honestly. No. The reason that they're not is because they're at a different stage of development, so they don't necessarily have to be concerned about that.
Bruh, so they came from behind us. We had the black economy in America was the second largest economy in the world behind Europe, behind the white America and white Europe, right? In the 1950s, we had the second largest economy in the world over everybody, Japan and everybody else. How the hell did they pass us up and now they running laps around us? Because we're focused on the wrong stuff. We sit and have conversations about dead people. They have conversations about progress.
That's a question.
You know what, Brandon, where we can't get around.
I've just got a question quickly. Before I say anything more, I've just got a question.
Yeah.
How would you substantiate that statement in terms of Black America in the 1950s having the second largest economy in the entire world?
You said, how do I come to that conclusion?
How would you substantiate the statement?
Because the Secretary of the Treasury of the United States, instead of telling white Americans to tap into international economy, global economies, he said, we need to tap into the African American economy because it's large, growing, and robust. That you can look up the statistics of this, but you can watch if you want a quick reference. Wait, you asked me. Wait, you asked me a question. Okay,
Argentina had a
don't
bigger
ask me a
economy at the
question if you
time.
don't want to answer. Just say what your
Go
opinion is,
ahead.
then, because
Go
you're not
ahead,
trying to
go
hear what I'm trying to say.
Go ahead.
No, we need to stop doing that. Like, you asked me a question, not for an answer, because you wanted to just say that's bullshit. So whatever. Why waste my time? Just say what you think, and I'll just keep being quiet.
Feel free to complete your answer, Randall. Go ahead.
What about
Yeah.
Argentina?
So if you want to quit,
Hold on,
if you
Argentina
want
had
to
a
quit,
bigger economy at the time.
hold on. Like, let me let Brandon, say his full thought, and then you could go in.
the whole point people don't realize is the black economy was just considered the American economy. So there was no real statistics that measured our economy against other countries. So you could say Argentina had a bigger economy at the time. No, they didn't, because we have more spending power. 1 in 3 black families owned their home. We drove the best cars, wore the best clothes. We bought the most expensive stuff in the store, even the stuff white people couldn't afford to buy. Argentina didn't have a bigger economy. Argentina's economy was measured because they weren't underneath a white group in the United States. I'm telling you what I know versus what y'all trying to. It doesn't matter. This is stupid. What are you going to do tomorrow?
Why do you
That's
keep
the
saying
question.
y'all? Why do you keep saying y'all?
Well, let me let Shaka Ra.
Why do you keep saying y'all?
Wait, hold on, let me let Shaka Ra
respond
respond
to that. I have some knowledge of this marketing campaign that was directed at the black community in the 1950s. Yeah, that's interesting. The brother's out. Okay, what's it? Right. So let me finish what I'm saying. I have some knowledge of this marketing campaign that was directed at the black community in the 1950s. What was just being suggested is that based upon that marketing campaign, black people in America had the second biggest economy in the world. This would be based upon a significantly deficient model of what economics is. At best, that scenario is a measurement to which white-owned American corporations were looking to capitalize on black consumability. Yeah, that's literally the most you can get out of that. At the same time, it would be false to say that this is the time when the American government was telling its corporations and its establishment to market towards the black community instead of accessing the foreign market, because this is actually the same time in which America was in fact expanding, seeking to expand her market in the African continent in particular. It had already been doing so for the better part of the 20th century in the Americas, with institutions like the United Fruit Company, with the building of the Panama Canal, and other things. So that idea is just historically false. All right, this is not the case. And there's other things that I could say, but so as not to hog the panel at this point, maybe just pause there and allow.
Because I have a lot there, like, because when I was on, with Brandon earlier today, and I mentioned something that a lot of people don't necessarily understand, in the sense where I'm not necessarily interested in a Black American political agenda, though I can resonate with those who feel an emotional connection to the Middle Passage, slavery, Jim Crow. I don't necessarily think that it's useful, so to speak. And the brother Shaka Ra, he was talking about Dr. Jared Ball's research, who actually is like an open Pan-African socialist, and he does promote socialism, and he's done a lot of work against black the notion of a black buying power. And
right.
as much as I do appreciate his willingness to study the topic honestly. I have to say that there's been moments where I've come across like Black Marxists who say that, like they would call me a fascist cultural nationalist, and they would say that any type of commerce, period, is leading to the same argument of, black buying power, black capital.
100%. Yeah.
So I don't necessarily, and that's
no. And when it comes to Dr. Ball, there are things that I agree with him on, and there are things that I don't agree with him on. On this particular point, I think that he conflates, for example, an Amos Wilson and a Marcus Garvey with modern day people who are just looking to make money, right? I think that's a woeful mistake to make. And I have said to him that there are some questions that I'm gonna be having for him at some point. I'm saying, which hasn't happened yet. But at the same time, as much as
the one thing I'm not gonna say to the brother Brandon, I'm not gonna let you sit up here and disregard Malcolm X, bro.
Well, again, this is what I'm saying in the sense of the fact that, first of all, as well as a deficient model of economics, we've got a deficient idea of what politics is if we're confining it to whether we should support the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and black people's sense and sensibilities can be defined as valued or not valued on whether we support Donald Trump or not. As well as the fact that the idea that Martin Luther King and Malcolm X were not concerned with what Martin Luther King and Booker T. Washington was doing is actually, again, false. There's literally examples of Martin Luther King going to Jamaica and visiting the shrine of Marcus Garvey and paying homage and making statements about the impact of this man. Malcolm X literally said in the last year of his life that he was forwarding the work that hasn't been done since the days of Marcus Messiah Garvey. Again, we're not even historically astute when we're making these statements. It's just wrong. Do you know what I'm saying? So let me get Nilotic Junta. You can give your take on the conversation. I think you kind of disagreed in the comments, so feel free to express.
Yeah, by the way, my comments don't show on your thing, but it's cool. I was going to say, look, socialism and capitalism, these are things that people debate online. These things don't exist in any real country. Like, you'll never find a country that is fully capitalist. You'll never find a country that is fully socialist. Your country wouldn't function. Even multi-billion-dollar corporations, they want some regulation after a while, because that helps them create cartels and helps them, create regulations that helps, create barriers to entry for new businesses. So I don't know why people come and debate. Like, you should just look at every industry in your country and say, okay, healthcare, should we private? Should this be mixed? Should this be free? Should this be only in the free market, or should this be only owned by the government? Then you decide. You have to look at every market in that way. You can't just look at the whole economy and say, oh, we should be socialist, we should be capitalist. And then there was someone in the comments who said, we don't need capitalism in Africa. We don't want to exploit ourselves. Bro, I don't know where these people grew up. Just look at African history. When you look at the great empires that you want to fantasize about in Africa, don't you think they were built on the exploitation of the lower classes? Do you think everyone was holding hands? Do you think there were no hierarchies in those empires?
It's deeply philosophical. This is like a deeply philosophical thing, because
no, it's not. There were hierarchies in those empires.
Sure,
let's be honest. For you to build anything that lasts, there has to be hierarchies, and there has to be strict regimens on how to climb those hierarchies.
Yeah, no, there were definitely some
whatever blood ties or whatever.
No, there were definitely some hierarchies.
There were hierarchies, though.
Well, let me explain.
Hierarchies too.
Let me explain. So, like, what I was trying to articulate is, especially in my reading of Chancellor Williams, like, a lot of these pre-colonial African economies were more democratic than many European democracies today. So in many cases, we may see the Oba who literally owns the wealth of the entire nation, but his responsibility is to redistribute it to those who are in need. And just different protocols against exploitation, from the vitalistic concepts that you see in the divine kingship traditions, where there's either a ritual sacrifice or an actual sacrifice of the ruler, be it the Oba, the Ezi, the Mvun, or whatever. I don't necessarily think that we could castigate these pre-colonial African societies.
I'm not castigating.
No, I mean, well, there are some things that
they were strong. No. Mm-hmm. I'm saying they were strong because they had hierarchies and because they exploited their bottom classes to earn super profits from those bottom classes, to then invest in their military, defense, so on and so forth. That's just how the world works. We have to live in reality. This is not some fantasy where every man is holding hands, singing Kumbaya, and now you build a strong nation. That's not how nation building works.
Well, of course not. And I kind of articulate.
So I don't even know what this.
I mean, wrong is wrong, bro. Wrong is wrong. And I think that's what we kind of going into the situation with slavery or the history with, this and that. But y'all go ahead, bro. My bad.
No, it's all good. I was just articulating that, like, in terms of things being mixed, I agree with that, and that's kind of the original reason why I wanted to make the African motor production video, was just to show the development of economics and politics outside of the Western paradigm, show like a kind of a third way, or the way that Lumumba classifies it as positive neutrality, right? Basically, where we're using leverage to get whatever we can for African people as a whole, right? And to Nailade Kunta's point, when you're dealing with political economies, each and every political economy, be it the tributary mode of production, be it the feudal mode of production, slave mode of production, capital mode of production, even certain variants of socialism, you have units of production, which are the businesses, you have commerce and trade, right? You have currencies. So a lot of these principles are universal, and we don't necessarily have to connect them to these Western social formations that are so ubiquitous across the planet today, right?
But you know what, Kamji? I wanted to ask you this.
Say again.
Is Brandon still on the phone?
No, he left. He left.
Oh, I wanted to ask him a question.
Let me say this here.
Maybe you can ask, bro. Maybe you can answer.
Brother, can I ask you a question?
Okay, let me let Bizzle ask, and then Nailade Kunta, you could ask after that.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, why would you run over to an African continent and go over there? I have no problem with you doing business, but why would you go over there? Is it like some hold your fists in the air, Black Power type of thing? You on some Anthony Anderson type stuff? Or you sitting right here in the richest country in the world? So why would you have to run back over there?
I mean, people go for different reasons, some people, like I said this in my video, just analyzing Phil Scott's analysis and how he was basically saying that all Black immigrants flee. But, if you've spoken to Black immigrants, that, like, I know Ethiopians, Somalis, Nigerians, Congolese, they may go back twice, 3 times a year, and maybe they're visiting family, maybe they're investing in businesses or properties that they have over there on the continent. There's a variety of reasons, and it's not necessarily always like connected to like an outward expression of Pan African nationalism as much as it is about survival and strategy. So that's my general answer to that.
It's easier to invest in a developed country than it is in an already developed country because of the regulations and so on. So if you want to start, let's say, a light industry, there's no regulations in Africa. So you can just pretty much go there and spend half the money you need to spend in America. Like, not even half, like a tenth of the money.
This is my thing. This is my thing when I talk to a lot of different brothers and sisters, and I'm not talking about you all, forgive me. I ain't trying to, come at you all or debate or nothing. But the reason why you can travel is because when we hear a lot of brothers talk about the Hebrew, just say for instance Hebrews or chematology, right? Yeah. The reason why you can travel is because you living in the most democratic world on the face of the planet. I mean, what is so hard for that for people to see? I mean, I don't understand it.
I know Shaka Ra's gonna have a lot to say to that.
Well. First of all, I mean, to say I live in England, right, UK, yeah, home of possibly, or at least what used to be up until recently, the strongest passport in the world, yeah. But you know what's happening at the moment? More and more Africans from the UK, from the Caribbean, who want to travel, are getting passports associated with their home nations or the home nations of their parents and grandparents in the Caribbean, like Jamaica, Antigua, Barbados, right? And that's partly because we've had an interest in the continent. For many places, it's easier, in fact, to travel without visa restrictions if you have your Caribbean passport, yeah. And so that's not necessarily the case. America promotes an image of itself like the UK does. That would lead us to believe all the benefits, yeah, and none of the liabilities.
What's your name, brother?
Shakara.
Okay, Shakara. Listen. Everybody in this chat and Kamji, he gonna tell you the same thing. If you got that blue and white passport, and you got a problem anywhere in the world, you know them choppers, them Black Hawk choppers, they're gonna come pick you up, and that's gonna
Yes,
be the U.S. helicopters. It's not
slightly
gonna be
different.
no problem. Hold on, bro, Paul. It's not just like the situation that kicked off out there in Sudan last month. It's not gonna be no problem. You know the first people who they came and pick up, get everybody
Yeah,
black from America, get
yeah,
everybody out of there.
but
And
this
I'm trying to tell all the chat and everybody, bro, we just gotta admit it, bro.
but what you're talking about,
It
though,
depends what type of American you
is
are.
likely
If you
to
are,
be true. The question, therefore, is then why is it true? So, as an African who comes from the Caribbean, one of the reasons why that fact is true is because of the fact that America has done a lot, yeah, to expand its military at the expense of other nations. Nobody has the military power, or a few nations come close, but America has the biggest military in the world at the moment. And so when you look at a nation like Sudan, you will see Americans coming to save their quote unquote citizens. What you won't see is what America does at the international level to contribute to the destabilization of the Sudan economy in the first place anyway. What you won't see is the American military troops, yeah, on the ground under the auspices of institutions like Afrikan, whereby they are facilitating American political interest, yeah, through military incursions on sovereign nations, yeah. So and the same goes for the UK. So I, as an African living in the UK, do not align myself because of the military superiority of Britain with the nation state of Britain. I align myself with my people wherever we are in the world, yeah. And so I don't believe, and it's actually a part of the program, yeah, for them to project their military might with the understanding that it might
But see,
subdue.
this is the thing.
Allow me to finish with the
Okay,
understanding that
my
it
bad,
might subdue the sensibilities of some of us who might be inclined to be inspired by an Omowale Malcolm X or a Marcus Garvey or an Assata Shakur or a Winnie Mandela to challenge that authority, because we understand that ultimately it is exploitative and detrimental to our development.
But
Yeah, there's parts that there's parts of
I don't see why a person would not, especially like I grew up over here out here in Chicago, right? So that means something to me, bro. When I hear Brandon talk about Martin Luther King, you know, he stayed out here. You feel me? So when I hear him talk down, or different brothers that, you know what I'm saying, Malcolm X and Woo Bop the Bam. So we have struggled in this country for years to make it to what it is, right? So we 40 million strong, or people may say 60 million strong right now. The demographics, I think, is over 330 million quote unquote Americans in the United States. But when you travel outside the United States, that's what gives you the power. See, a person in the Sudan or Ethiopia, they don't have that same power when you rocking back and forth in the United States. They don't have that power in the UK. When they look at that United States passport, that brings power. Anybody got a problem, you're gonna have a problem.
On that point, you know, there's definitely been cases where citizens of the United States have been assassinated for standing against certain elite forces within the United States. So is the power necessarily an Americanity, or is it basically surrounded by the imperialist objectives of the United States?
I wouldn't say
can
it's
I
American.
add one more thing onto this?
Go ahead, bro.
Brother, an Eastern European white person, when they come to Africa, has more protections than you as a Black American. As a Black American, when you come to Africa, they look at you as easy money. And secondly, no African country is worried about a Black American dying, an American embassy getting on their neck. If it was a white American, they would be terrified. Bro, you know how many?
Wait. You telling me?
Even just
wait. Hold on. You telling me on this line right now, if somebody bomb or do something to an American embassy, that they got more influence than us?
You as an individual coming to visit. Okay, you're talking about Brandon. Brandon in Kenya, as an individual by himself, does not have the same protection as a white American. That white American, bro, even when people see him from afar, they're like, look, if anything happens to him, the cops are going to do serious investigation. So I'm not even trying
No,
to
well,
get
actually,
to it.
Kenya, they have
This guy's
one
an
of the
easy hit.
biggest U.S. embassies, brother.
But you know the reason for that,
Bro,
though?
we're
The
not talking
reason
about
why.
the embassy. We're talking about individuals.
But hold on.
Can you explain it to him on it?
The reason why, like, okay, for out here, for instance, like if a Chinese person is murdered in the United States, like the Chinese embassy is going to call the U.S. consulate. The same thing for an Indian, because they have political leverage, geopolitical leverage on an international scale. So as far as like, you know, Africans who are born in the United States, Africans who are born in Britain, who are born in France, yeah, to a certain degree, as we are, you know, behind the curtain of the empire, we do have advantages, and we should certainly use those advantages strategically in the same way, you know, Kwame Nkrumah and, you know, Kamayupa Bernard and Samuel Njoma and Sobukwe use their relationship to these Western institutions to be able to galvanize and organize Black people towards higher objectives. To me, that's smarter. Even though some parts of it may be true, I don't think that we should anchor ourselves within the possibilities of Americanism and American jingoism, because history has shown us that it won't necessarily lead to anything positive.
Brother, can I ask you a question? You are an American. I'm assuming a Black American.
I was born.
You think if you come to Africa, you have the same level of protection?
So say that one more time.
You think when you come to Africa, if you came to Africa and you got kidnapped, there would be the same level of attention given to you as if a white person got kidnapped?
Generally speaking, no.
Exactly. So I don't know why you think you have this layer of protection, bro. Like you have to keep your head down.
Well, there is. I mean,
now because everyone has the internet and so on, people realize that you're not a protected species in the American sphere. Like they're gonna put a hit on you, bro. Like you can't just walk around.
We're not,
with
but
an American
I think
passport thinking you can.
I was just going to say, I think that, like, from a nuanced perspective, we can accept that, like, the fact that Shaka Ra, you know, has a British passport, you know, the fact that my passport's from the United States, you know, if we are on the continent of Africa, they're going to see us differently than they see a Nigerian or a Congolese.
That's all I was saying.
Right?
That's all I was saying. Yeah,
that's true. That's true. But I don't necessarily think that just because that's true, we should anchor ourselves in a Western project. That's my position.
You know what? You know what? Having been to Africa, yeah, like 2 nations, Ghana and Sierra Leone. Do you know what the biggest currency that I have there is? That I come from Jamaica. Yeah, I'm talking about on a social level. Yeah. Right. Just having locks, yeah, and coming from Jamaica, like ones might be shocked to the extent to which Africans on the continent respond positively to just that fact. Yeah, the British passport again is nothing more than a reflection of the fact that Britain was a colonizer and remains a neo-colonizer, and that neo-colonial legacy looms large. It's not something that I own as my own, and I think it's very dangerous for African people who are living in these nations who meet the first brunt, basically, of the discriminatory practices of these governments. Just because we're not experiencing the sharp end of it, we're going to use that quote-unquote protection to neglect what is taking place in majority African nations around the world. I think that's very problematic. But this leads to the other point now, which is coming out of the discussion that was happening when I came on in terms of modern day politics. Yeah, we're never really going to understand modern day politics. One, if we don't get beyond political parties, and two, if we don't understand economic systems. Yeah, and political projects. And one of the major ones that we need to understand in this day and age, especially because it's in so much problems at the moment, is that of neoliberalism. And when we talk about people not being concerned with people in the past, if we understand what neoliberalism is, then we understand again that that's false. Yeah, we're talking about ideas that were birthed by people like Adam Smith and the like, that were resurrected in the 1950s through the 1980s by economists, like Milton Friedman, who is also now dead. And there are significant groups of people today that are still trying to develop the economy of the world based upon the theories of a Milton Friedman, as exemplified.
You against Thomas Sowell?
Sorry. In the governments of Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan in particular. We have to be very, very aware of a liberal agenda and its talking points.
My thing is this. I have nothing against Milton Friedman. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, don't forget Milton Friedman's water boy for the black people, Thomas Sowell, who pretty much just says the same thing Milton Friedman said.
That's a whole.
And I think he was also an understudy under Milton Friedman.
That's a whole different rabbit.
No, but it's true.
It's an on-topic rabbit hole, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think Omowale Africa, like he did a video, like one of his strike drum lectures. And by the way, check out, Omowale Africa. I'm a huge fan of his content. He kind of exposed, how Milton Friedman was like kind of or not Milton Friedman, Thomas Sowell was kind of an agent. And personally, I actually want to do a response to Thomas Sowell's content because some of his African historical views are way off. In my opinion.
Wait. I don't have a problem with Thomas Sowell.
Well, that could be a point of debate because for a lot of
the problem with Thomas Sowell, is that he's literally a bought and paid for mouthpiece for the neoliberal agenda in America. And when I say that literally, I mean so going back to the 1970s and 80s, he was part of this thing called the Fairmount Papers, which is basically Republican government trying to challenge directly the policies that were being put forward by radical black activists, from the more black nationalist ones to the more socialist ones, like the members of the Black Panther Party, like Bobby Seale, who began to run for office on the West Coast, right? And so they began to fund through institutions like the Heritage Foundation, the Manhattan Institute, and I believe, if memory serves me off the top of my head right now, the Manhattan Institute is the one that directly funds Thomas Sowell, to basically put forward policies and ideas and talking points that would be able to protect the government and right-wing think tanks for putting forward policies that detrimentally affect the black community. And so that is what Thomas Sowell has been put in place to do. So when you hear him talking about history, and his talking points are so far off, they don't have to be accurate because he's playing a media game. He's been put there to play a media game that protects the American establishment from just critique in relation to its foreign policy, in particular in relation to Africa. That is the problem, particularly with Thomas Sowell.
Yeah, I mean, I can't necessarily disagree with any of that because I was about to get into, some of Amos Wilson's talking points, which I think he mentioned some of that, particularly the Manhattan Institute, right? Mm-hmm. And I just think that like my main issue with him, his funding notwithstanding, is just the way that he sets up certain arguments are so disingenuous. It leads me to wonder.
But you know what, Kamji? What will make him different from Brother Brandon? What would make him different?
Well,
very little, because Brandon is a disciple of Thomas Sowell.
Brandon has shouted out Thomas.
No one knows who Brandon. I see him as an intellectual.
Oh yeah, let me say this. Like,
but no one knows who Brandon is. But the thing is, you show.
Go ahead. Are you there, Lalani?
Oh, I thought you were.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah, you said let me say this. Yeah. So just finish what you wanted to say. I'll wait.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that from my from my perspective in the space of Pan Africanism, like I was kind of mentioning before, like there's a huge diversity of views. You know, you have people promoting the whole gambit of things from capitalism to communism, feminism, queer theory, right? All these types of things. And many people who are more, you know, radical, traditionalist, you know, cultural nationalists, they wouldn't necessarily be comfortable with that. And my perspective has evolved a little bit, if I could use that term, in the sense of I think it's more fair and more efficient if we can have these types of conversations and hash things out with brothers and sisters who are amenable to like a type of project based upon unity, liberation, etc. Even if we don't necessarily agree, right? Like I definitely haven't studied Sal to the extent that, you know, Brother Shaka Ra has. I just know that there's things that he said, there's things that have come across my feed that I definitely disagree with, right? And if someone found his content interesting as a Black conservative, wanting to kind of get away from like the LGBT isms and basically a lot of the misandry that you may see in certain Pan-Africanist adjacent spaces, to me that makes sense. Even though I would disagree with the conclusion, from a reason perspective, it makes sense and it kind of opens the door for a deeper conversation.
Yep, I would agree with that.
You know what? That's why I appreciate the conversation tonight, because I know ain't nobody on here arguing or anything, but I definitely appreciate you all. You know, just you know, our different viewpoints. You know what I mean? Because the biggest thing I wanted Verse to have something on, but I know I can't push that on him, but on the chematology type of information in Hebrew, but that's for another conversation. But yeah, I definitely appreciate you all.
No, definitely. I'm about to wrap it up, so I'm going to let Shaka
Thomas
Ra.
Sowell
So say again, Malotic?
just to end on this Thomas Sowell thing, just what I wanted to say before you
Right,
said,
before we wrap it up,
just to say one point that Thomas Sowell said. He said, and just understand this for 1 second. He said, when you look at the balance of paper, when you look at the balance sheet, he said balance of payments. Europe didn't actually make any profits by colonizing Africa. This is the level of retardation that people listen to when they listen to Thomas Sowell. And just because he has a black skin, you know, this is the same thing Milton Friedman says, but just because Thomas Sowell has a black skin, you see black people clapping like seals. Oh, you're so smart. Bro, that's like saying Shell doesn't make any profits by undervaluing Nigerian oil and then transferring it to an island where they overvalue the refined oil there. Like, obviously, you're going to cook the books. You don't want it to be seen. Like, basic stuff like this. And this guy says it, but because, you know, he's black and these black Republicans are brain dead, they just clap like seals because, oh my God, someone is saying something different. Like, it's basic things like this. Milton Friedman and Thomas Sowell in 2023, any economics university you go to that is in the Chicago School of Economics, they are seen as a joke. But somehow, because this guy has a YouTube channel and his YouTube videos are doing numbers, you see all these black Republicans and they want to be black revolutionaries showing you this. Oh, Thomas Sowell said something. Look, bro, are you really going to look at me and say, Cecil Rhodes didn't benefit from the diamonds she was getting from Southern Africa and all the minerals she was getting? But obviously, he's not going to show it in the books. He's going to undervalue the raw materials he's getting from Africa, take it to Europe where he refines it, and then he'll say, this is worth 10 times more now. Because value in economics is subjective. You can change value. The only value that matters is at the selling price. When you have vertically integrated everything, you can change the value. This is basic economics. This is basic business stuff that the average person who's watching these videos doesn't understand. And they come to you and tell you, this guy's an intellectual. This guy's a con artist. There's nothing more to him. So when people say, oh, Thomas Sowell, when a black person mentions to me Thomas Sowell, this is when I automatically shut down. I just look at him, this guy's an idiot, and I have to move on.
Yeah, personally for me, I'm a bigger fan of Dr. Gerald Horne, and then maybe after Gerald Horne, I really appreciate Amos Wilson and his blueprint for Black Power, even though it's been a while since I've read it. And as far as Sal is concerned, if it is his objective to defend neoliberalism and American or global capitalism, he's doing an excellent job. I think he's being paid well, and he's doing a good job for his paymasters. So, like, as far as I'm concerned, and this goes back to my original point, the more we get trapped into this left-right paradigm, and the less we're actually engaged in building our own autonomous political economy, we're going to keep getting caught up in these games. So it's just really, that's what it really boils down to. So I'm gonna go ahead.
That's why I really didn't want to go there with Brandon, because I'm not trying to get caught up in Democratic and Republican. You feel me?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to get caught up in it. Yeah, I ain't trying to get caught up in that, bro.
No, I feel it. So, Bizzle, you're going to close out, then we'll let Nilotic, and then we'll end with Shakara.
Yeah. My whole thing is, as far as our people, sometimes we have to look at and we have to make a painful decision as far as saying, if you live over here in the United States, you're living in a land that's the most military dominant. You are protected. That's what I'm trying to tell our people. That's why you can travel the way you can. You have no problem to go to France. You have no problem to go to Ethiopia. You have no problem to go to Somalia. Because you know why? If something happened, the U.S. State Department over there right now. You have no problem. And that's a big problem for our people just to admit. Why don't they just admit that? But I digress.
All right, thanks for the input. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely something to say about our strategic position, in the West as descendants of Africa, and necessarily how we function with that and what we're doing to strategically build with that for the good of our progeny. So shout out to Bizzle, thanks for all your input, and I hope you have a great night. So Nilotic, we're going to move on to you. Go ahead and close out.
Yeah. My only closing statement is, I don't understand. The Black Republican or the Black Conservative will tell you, liberals don't have your interest at heart, and she will say, go and vote for the Republicans. Why are you moving from the liberal plantation to the conservative plantation? Both these parties don't have your interest at heart. So I don't understand these Black conservatives that come and tell you all the bad things the liberals have done. Okay, true. Or the Democrats have done. Okay. Do you think that Trump has your interest at heart? I don't know why people just cannot disassociate themselves from these two parties completely. Why do you still feel the need to still pick sides? Like, both these sides don't care about you, bro. Just move on. Start your own thing if you want to, or do something outside of the box. Like, I don't know why. Have you noticed? They will come to you. I've heard this from every Black Republican. He'll say the Black liberals do X, Y, Z, and he wants you to go back and forth with them. Like, he wants you to defend the Democrat. Like, stop thinking of this as a team sport. None of these sides care about you. Trump doesn't care about you. Neither does Joe Biden. In fact, they would have a bit behind closed doors. They're both probably insulting you. So I don't know why you feel the need to defend either side. Just go on, live your life, and try and create your own thing.
No, I definitely agree, and shout out to Nilotic Kuta for coming in. That's true in the sense of, like, that was my original point. The reason why I made the video, Pan African nationalism versus Pan African socialism, just to kind of inspire more of us to be more involved with our own political trajectory historically, and not necessarily look for outsiders in areas where we don't have autonomy to define ourselves. So, that's still what I believe, and I'm going to try to be as consistent as possible in articulating that point. But shout out to Nilotic Kuta and Bizzle, and we're going to end with Shakara. Feel free to close out.
Thanks, bro. I take it that you delivered some kind of a presentation at the beginning of this.
Yeah, I gave a little bit of a, basically it was kind of a replay of Garveyism is an anti-capitalist philosophy, where I was trying to articulate that, just because Garvey had money and capital and commerce and doesn't necessarily mean his project
was a capitalist. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna go back and watch it nonetheless and see what was said. Sure. Just to end really on the last point that you made, which is that we have to being African centered is not just about I'm an African and I'm proud. We have to really chart an African. We have to center ourselves in every area of people activity, which means that we have to find a political paradigm or political paradigms in the political spectrum that is our own. Yeah. So therefore, conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat, Labour, conservative is insufficient for us manifesting the best of ourselves in terms of nationhood. And just to give an example of this, if the dangers of trapping ourselves in that dynamic, at the same time, that African nations in the Caribbean and nations throughout South and Central America were being wrapped up in structural adjustment programs that destroyed their economies, as led by institutions that were run by the American government. At the same time that Black communities in the United States of America were being flooded with drugs, and mass incarceration was being imposed on African men in America. The same forces responsible for one were responsible for the other. This is the same period in which Africans in the UK who had bought their homes since the 1950s were being tricked out of their homes in the name of gentrification. And at the same time, drugs were being flooded into the Black community in the UK also, because there's a relationship between the American government and the UK government. So we have to be very, very careful when we're trying to leverage the protection of Western imperialist nations as our own. And finally, I would just say that it's very important to pay attention to what's going on in the Black world, what's going on in Haiti at the moment, what's going on in Mali and Burkina Faso and Congo and Zimbabwe, and nations such as those, because it would have an impact upon our purview of what power is, where power lies at the moment, and where power may possibly lie in the very near future, especially if we are doing our work to effect power to the best of our ability. So give thanks once again, King, and I look forward to watching the rest of the show. Peace.
Absolutely. I appreciate you for coming on. It's been a pleasure as always with all of your intellect and insight historically. Shout out to Shaka Ra. Please, everybody, subscribe to his channel. He produces great content. And if you want to get more involved in that process of, political and historical development, he's great. He's definitely a great content creator to check out. And for those of you who are just coming in, we're about to wind it all down. And we've just been talking about what's better for Black people, for the African movement, those of us who idealize, or those of us who would desire, a greater paradigm of liberation for those of African descent, capitalism or socialism. And we kind of went through the gambit. And essentially what we landed on is the fact that, developing and cherishing our own historical political trajectory is definitely more important than getting wrapped up into the left-right paradigm. Me personally, there are certain things that I agree with, on the left, or certain things that I agree with on the right, but it's more so important to practice what Lumumba called positive neutrality, and basically use leverage the best way that we can internationally in order to get the best result. Shout out to Nyami Ubuntu, shout out to Zugichi, check the playback. It's hella lit, right? And with that, I got one more thing that I wanted to add. Please subscribe to my channel. I'm going to release some really good content in the near future. And with that, I'll play my thing.
Louisa.